I will not record. So you should remind me during the class, okay? When I start recording, you see the bar on the Teams, okay, that I'm recording or not. Okay, so you can check and let me know. Okay, so what we discussed yesterday was that um, the shockwave theory. Okay, the shockwave theory. So we said shockwave is when you are going from one traffic state to another traffic state, like from free flow to stopped or something like that. And shockwave happens on a signal with more regularity because of the opening and closing of the signal, the red and green light. On freeways, it is more random. Then we looked at the equation to calculate the speed of shockwave, the speed of, you can say, extension of the Q because of shock wave, or the dissipation of the Q because of the shock wave. Okay, so there was an equation for that, and then there were two other equations for calculating the number of vehicles which cross from one regime of the shock wave to another regime, from one traffic state to another traffic state. So there were equations for that. We solved an example regarding the shock wave theory to calculate the speed of the shock wave. Okay, and what else? Yeah, then we discussed the gap acceptance. Okay, so gap acceptance is used at unsignaled intersections when the drivers are deciding when they should move into the intersection. Okay, so how much gap they are willing to accept between them and the conflicting traffic stream to cross the same point. Okay, that is the gap. And then we discussed two terms, which was critical gap and follow-up headway. So critical gap is the gap at which we have equal chances that a driver may or may not accept the gap. Okay, so that gap which has equal chances of acceptance and rejection by the driver. And then we discuss follow-up headway, which is the extra time the additional vehicle needs to get into the intersection after the critical gap. Okay, so you have only critical gap available. The only one driver will enter, and after the critical gap, if you have uh, more time available to you, which is equal to the follow-up headway, then you may have extra vehicles entering into the intersection as well. So for example, if your critical gap is 5 seconds, follow-up headway is 2 seconds. So in 7 seconds, you can have 2 vehicles entering. In 9 seconds, you can have 3 vehicles entering. So every extra vehicle which will enter after the first vehicle in the same cycle or in the same flow, that will require 2 seconds of extra time after the critical gap. Okay, and to show the accepted and rejected gaps, you can plot it like this. You can find out at how much gap the vehicle, the driver decided to enter or not to enter. Okay, so this is a critical gap where the two lines are meeting, the accepted gaps and rejected gaps. And then we have the minimum gap as well. Okay, the gap at which any driver decided to enter, even one of the drivers. And then I came to the topic of queuing theory. So why do we need to study queuing theory? Queuing theory is mainly studied in
Doctor,
yeah, I'm
you
not
are
here.
not on the screen.
Okay, I'm getting old. I'm forgetting one thing or the other, and that's why I need your help. Yeah? Help an old man. Okay. Uh, so I was saying, why do we need to study queuing theory? Because it is very important for intersections. Queuing is very important for intersections, and even without intersections, like I showed you in the previous lecture for shockwave theory, that even on freeways you may need to know how long the queue will be. So queues, the length of the queue is an important parameter for performance of the intersection, and it is also important for design of the intersection when you are designing the storage lanes, the turn pockets, the pockets which you use for storing the vehicles which want to take a turn, and it is also important for designing the length of the ramps. So you can see here one of the example. These vehicles are trying to get off the ramp here, and you can see the queue is extending to the freeway now. The queue of the ramp is extending to the freeway. In queuing theory, we apply FIFO approach. What is FIFO approach? It is known as first in, first out. First in, first out. Okay, so the queuing theory itself and this approach or any other approach, we use service time as well. We will not discuss it right now. So there are other things which are related to queuing theory, such as service time and number of terminals and so on and so forth. So these are all used in queuing theory, even for traffic. But these terms are not coming from traffic, they are borrowed from management sciences. Okay, so in management, when they are designing how many booths they should have, how many counters they should have in a mall or in a sales area or something like that. So they study queuing theory. How long will be our queue? How many people will be at a time in the queue, and so on and so forth. So they discuss that. So this term FIFO is also coming from management sciences. Okay, so first in, first out means the person who is first in the queue will leave the queue first, right? And this is understandable, obvious. The person who is first in the queue will leave the queue first. Or in our cases, I can modify it that the person who is first in the queue should leave first. Should, because you can have somebody, like in this figure, you can have this car, okay, who will go like this and will directly come at the front of the queue. This can happen to us. This can happen to us. So first in, first out means the person who is in the front of the queue should leave first. Okay. The other approach is LIFO, which is last in, first out, and this is applied on, again, in management sciences. So you would often see when you are going for shopping, when you go for shopping, when you are doing grocery or something, you go to the store and you would pick out the thing which is the freshest one, right? Which is, if you are picking out vegetables or fruits, you will pick out the one which is the most fresh, the freshest one. So that was basically last in, first out. The thing which was the freshest, okay, the most freshest thing was the one which came in the end. Okay, obviously the one which came before that would not be so fresh. Okay, so you will be picking that in the end. If there is nothing there from today, then you may pick something. You may pick something from yesterday or something. Okay, so this is last in, first out, and this doesn't make any sense with queues, traffic queues. So FIFO approach, and we use average travel time. Okay, so the first in the queue, what is the average travel time for that person? We'll take it as the travel time for the other drivers as well. The queue parameters, the length of the queue, the speed of the queue, and so on and so forth, they can be estimated or you can simulate them. Okay, so for example, when you will use Sidra for your term projects, in Sidra, when you finish the analysis, it will give you the length of the queue as well, the maximum length of the queue and average length of the queue and so on and so forth. So these things can be simulated. Simulated means you will put the values in the software. So software will run for you the analysis for the whole hour, and it will give you the values in the end. Then how much is the queue length expected at this location? Okay, or you can estimate it. Okay, so you have equations as well. We can manually estimate the number of vehicles in the queue. Okay, so we may see it when we are discussing the signal design. Okay, we may see it. Okay, because for signal design, the length of the queue is not directly used. Okay, it is used when you are doing the operational analysis for signals. Okay, but queue length is not directly related to level of service. So you'll see. Okay, then another factor for traffic operational analysis is heavy vehicles effect, the effect of heavy vehicles, and this is considered by taking the percentage of heavy vehicles in the traffic stream. How many heavy vehicles you have in terms of percentage. Why we need to do that? Why we should count heavy vehicles separately? Because these vehicles are larger than cars, larger than passenger cars, so they will take more space in the queue. Okay, and heavy vehicles are slower as well, so their acceleration and deceleration is slower. So whenever they are stopping at a signal or they are entering a roundabout, then they need more gap. Okay, so For example, if they are stopped at a signal and the signal becomes green and now they are restarting, so they will need more time to restart. Okay, so they will consume more of the green time as compared to a passenger car in crossing the intersection. Okay, and same thing for acceptance of the gap as well. Because of their slower acceleration, they need or they require a longer gap. I think we discussed it yesterday as well, that heavy vehicles, critical gap for heavy vehicles will be higher. And they also need a wider turning radius. So when they are turning on the intersection or on the road, they need wider turning radius. Again, because of their size, right? Because of their size. And the second thing is because of their weight. Because of their weight, they also have more risk of being overturned, right? Something heavy which is trying to turn has a greater risk of being overturned, to fall on the pavement as compared to a passenger car, right? Because of the weight, when they are turning, obviously their center of gravity is shifting, and because of that, they have a higher likelihood that they may fall down. Okay. Heavy vehicles may also have physical constraints. Okay. On steep gradients or long gradients. So their speed can be much slower than other vehicles in the traffic stream, meaning cars, meaning mainly cars. Okay, so there the speed of heavy vehicles can be much slower than cars on gradients which are steep or gradients which are long. Okay, so obviously if the truck is slowing down, the heavy vehicle is slowing down, it is impacting the other drivers as well. So they are not just slowing down themselves, they are slowing down others as well. So you will not reach the capacity, will not reach the potential speed of that highway if the heavy vehicle is having problems because of the gradient. Sometimes, okay, for steep gradient, it is understandable, right? For steep gradient, it is understandable because on steep gradient, sometimes the cars also slow down. Not as slow as the trucks, but they also slow down. So on steep gradients, we understand. But even on long gradients, maybe the gradient is not so steep, maybe it's, let's say, 6%, for example. Okay, so 6% is, it's higher, okay, but it's not so steep. You can go up to 8 or 10% as well. Okay, or let me take 5%. So 5% is not so steep. Okay, but if that 5% gradient continues for long distance, so let's say you have 5% constant gradient going up for, let's say, 3,000 feet or 6,000 feet, then as the heavy vehicles move along the gradient, they start to feel more resistance because of their weight and because of gaining in elevation. Okay, so and if they are going down, obviously then they are gaining momentum, so the drivers need to be more careful. So in both cases, if they are going up on long gradients or they are going down on long gradients, they will be getting slower as they keep on moving ahead. Okay, so even long gradients are problematic even if they are not steep for heavy vehicles. Okay, so because of these reasons, you should know the percentage of heavy vehicles. Okay, now no, we have one more. Yeah, so in this slide you can see different types of heavy vehicles. Okay, and their number of axles. So axles are basically, you see this tire, so on the other side you will have the other tire, right? So this is one axle. This is one axle, the rod which is connecting the two tires. Okay, so in this bus you can see 1, 2, 3 axles, and this one has 2 axles. Okay, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 axles. Okay, so you can see the number of axles and the type of vehicle. Okay, so you have, these are motorcycles. Okay, and these are basically different types of cars. So even pickups and vans are considered as cars. Okay, then this is a bus. Okay, and these are single unit trucks. These are considered as single unit trucks. Okay, so these are smaller trucks which are, the other trucks are considered as trailers. Okay, the trucks which you see from group 8 onwards, these are considered as trailers. trailers, and these are just considered as single unit trucks. So they have one body, okay, but obviously the number of axles are different. So you have 2 axles, 3 axle, and 4 axle single unit trucks. So these are single unit trucks, and then these are big trailers. Okay. So big trailers basically they have a trailer attached to them. As simple as that. Okay. There's a trailer which is attached to the front body of the truck, and usually they are bigger, heavier. They carry more load. Okay, so this is just brief. Okay, so the topics which we discussed in the end, the gap acceptance and the shockwave theory and so on. These are like prerequisites for what we will discuss later on. So we did not discuss it in detail here, but later on we will use them. We will use these concepts when we are doing the calculations. Okay, so this is the end of lecture number 2, okay, which was for traffic flow theory. Okay, lecture number 3 is okay. How many of you have foundation test now? How many? Raise your hand. Who? How many of you have foundation test? At 10 o'clock, right? Okay, so I will leave you earlier. Okay, I will leave you earlier. So I will just introduce this topic. So this topic is again from chapter number 5. Okay, and in this topic we will discuss analysis of uninterrupted flow facilities. So we have two types of facilities: uninterrupted and interrupted. And what is the difference between them? The difference between uninterrupted and interrupted flow facilities. What is the difference?
It's the level of control. So uninterrupted flows don't have signals and roundabouts.
Okay.
The flow is continuous.
So basically there are no interruptions. These signals and roundabouts are interruptions. So if a highway doesn't have these interruptions, we call it uninterrupted flow facility. Okay, so which is what they are saying here, without any add grid intersections. Okay, and without any traffic control devices. So the add grid intersections and traffic control devices can stop the movement. Okay, the movement. So then in that case, if they don't have these two things, we call them uninterrupted flow facilities. So you may have, for example, what are the other traffic control devices? They can be pedestrian signals, for example. So you can have pedestrian signal even at mid-block locations as well. So in that case, if your flow is stopped because of the pedestrian signal, this is still uninterrupted flow facility. Although that signal is not at an intersection. So there is no intersection, but there is still a traffic control device which is stopping the flow. So if you have any traffic control device which is stopping the movement or giving the priority of the movement to any other user, then this will be interrupted flow. Then. So for uninterrupted flow, you shouldn't have these things. We can apply the term uninterrupted flow also to multi-lane highways if the traffic on that highway or on a particular part of that highway is outside the influence of traffic signals or other traffic control devices. If the flow on a multi-lane highway is outside the influence of traffic signals or any of the control devices, then the flow in that part can also be considered as uninterrupted flow. Okay, because it's outside the influence of the traffic control device. So for example, if you are going on a highway and the signal is, let's say, after 3 miles. So 3 miles is a very long segment. So you will not slow down until you reach close to the signal. So until you reach close to the signal, you are outside the influence of the signal. You are not slowing down. There's no queue in front of you, and your flow is basically not affected by the signal itself or any other control device which is to come after so much distance. So in that case, the flow in that part of the highway will be considered as uninterrupted flow. And what is the distance at which the flow can be considered as uninterrupted or outside the influence of the traffic control device? They have found it to be 2 miles. Okay, so if the segment is 2 miles long before the signal, then it is sufficient for the flow to move without the influence of the traffic signal. Okay. So in uninterrupted flow facilities, the flow is mainly governed by the interaction of vehicles and drivers. So since there is no external interruption, so you stop because of other vehicles or because of traffic jam or something. So you stop because what is happening on the segment itself with the traffic, not because of a signal or any other external traffic control device. On uninterrupted flow facilities, traffic needs to enter and exit from somewhere, right? Drivers need to enter and exit from a highway, otherwise they will not use it. So they do it from interchanges. Again, what are interchanges? What is an interchange? So traffic enters and exits or uninterrupted flow facilities from interchanges. What is an interchange?
It's like the loop or the ramp that you enter and exit from on highways.
Loop? Call it a loop?
I don't know. You go from under or below the flow itself.
Yeah. She is right. Can somebody help with the exact term? What do we call it? She is calling it a loop. Somebody should help her.
A ramp?
A ramp. Thank you. A ramp. Okay. Don't call it a loop. Call it a ramp. Okay. And it's not a loop, obviously. Otherwise, you will end up at the same highway, right? It's not a loop. It looks circular. It's not a loop. Okay. So these are ramps. Okay. So traffic enters and exits from the ramp on uninterrupted flow facilities. And these ramps do not put any control on the traffic on the main highway. The exits and entries from the ramps do not put any control on the traffic on the main highway. So the highway will still remain uninterrupted. So somebody is coming out from the ramp and you are on the main highway, you don't have to stop for them. They will stop for you, and vice versa. Like when they are exiting, okay, so if they don't find the place to exit, they will stop at their place. Okay, so if they have enough space in that ramp, so they will stop on the ramp. Okay, you don't have to stop for them. Okay, so ramps and interchanges are not considered as interruptions because there is no traffic control device or traffic control measure applied to the traffic on the main highway. Okay, so what are the types of operations we can have? Okay, we can have traffic entering. So the ramps from which they enter, we call them on ramps. And then in that case, they are doing the merging. Okay, now merging means what? So this is the main highway and this is the ramp. Okay, okay, don't mind this line. Okay, so traffic is coming from here. Okay, so they are merging onto the main highway. So this is the main line and the drivers from the ramp will try to merge on with the main highway as well. So this is why we call it merging. Okay, this is merging. Then we have traffic exiting. So the ramp which is used for traffic exiting, exit of traffic is known as off ramp. And then in that case, they will be diverging. They will be diverging. Okay, so you will have a ramp like this. Okay, obviously it may go in a circular way like this, but obviously we are just looking at the highway. Okay, so you are the driver on the main highway. Okay, you want to take the ramp, you will be diverging towards the ramp. Okay, diverging from the traffic stream, the main traffic stream towards the ramp. Okay, and obviously diverging can also cause some sort of a problem with the main traffic. Okay, so diverging, okay, when you are exiting the traffic. Merging and diverging happen at high speed. Like I said, you have a separate lane for you, the ramp for you. So normally when you are merging and diverging, you do it at high speed, or you need to do it at high speed. You need to do merging and diverging at high speed because you are doing it from the freeway. So if you are slowing down, then you are slowing down the others as well, and it will be dangerous for you. Okay, so it's not good for traffic flow, it's not good for safety as well. Okay, so merging and diverging needs to happen at high speed. So that's why in most of the cases, whenever there is an off ramp or on ramp, you will see it with an auxiliary lane. So when, for example, for this driver, I will give him a lane here, an extra lane here, so he has the chance to accelerate and then do the merging. Okay, same thing for this driver. I will have an extra lane here from where he can exit the traffic, come onto this lane and do the merging. Oh, sorry, do the diverging. Okay, so there's an auxiliary lane for both cases then. Normally at the bottom end, what we call as the bottom end of the ramp, we have a freeway. Okay, so ramps are taking you from freeway to some other highway, right? So the end of the ramp, which is at the freeway, we call it the bottom end, and that end is uninterrupted. The bottom end of the ramp is uninterrupted. Okay, so at that end where the ramp is meeting the freeway, merging or diverging, we have it uninterrupted. And the top end is the end of the ramp where it is meeting the other highway. So the top end will be interrupted. Okay, so in the other end, so for example, so I'm on this ramp, okay, and I am merging onto this highway then. Okay, so at this location, I may have a signal for me or a roundabout for me or a stop sign for me in order to, take me to the main highway. Or before taking me to the main highway, I may have some sort of a sign for me or for the other drivers, which I will, which I will conflict with. Okay, so one end of the ramp is uninterrupted because it is with the freeway. The other end may be interrupted. Okay, so the other end, at the other end, you may have a roundabout, you may have a stop sign, you may have a signal that may be influencing your flow as well as flow of the conflicting traffic. Okay, so this can happen. So the end which is interrupted, we call it the top end. The top end. What are the different types of flow regimes we have on uninterrupted flow facilities? We have at low traffic. When the traffic is low, we go at FFS. FFS stands for what?
Free flow speed.
Free flow speed. Yeah, free flow speed. So at low traffic volume, your speed will be close to free flow speed. Okay, so that means your speed is not affected by other drivers or other vehicles. You are just going, you are just deciding about your speed based on the design of the road and how do you feel about the road. How do you feel about the road? Feeling means what? So for example, you are on a highway which is in a mountainous area. Okay, although the highway is wide, okay, and it is very smooth, but you see on one side there's a big mountain, on the other side you see a very deep valley. So normally your feeling would be to be more cautious, So even if some design engineer designed that highway for high speed, even in that case, since you do not feel comfortable at that location, you may reduce your speed. Okay, so locations where drivers are not feeling comfortable, they may reduce their speed and they may not be achieving the design speed. Okay, but this is as per their own judgment, using the judgment of the driver, not because of the influence of other vehicles. So we will still consider it as the free flow speed. Okay, so when you are designing the road, you have to keep in mind about the situation as well, in what situation the driver will be driving in. Okay, when traffic flow increases, density increases on the road. Okay, and speed will reduce with more density. We will have less speed because the drivers will be getting closer to each other. You will have less spacing, and then you will go slowly as well. Then we have maximum sustainable flow, which is the capacity. I think we defined this term earlier as well. Okay, so the important point here is capacity is the flow and not the number of vehicles that can be on the road. If you have 1,000 vehicles on the road but they are not moving, this is not the capacity. Okay, so maximum sustainable flow, the flow which can continuously move through the highway, that will be capacity. And if you have this condition when you have not reached the capacity, then you will call it undersaturated or uncongested. Up till maximum sustainable flow, up till a value of maximum sustainable flow, the condition is known as undersaturated or uncongested. Okay, so we have free flow, which is not affected by other drivers, but then you start to have more flow, but you have still not reached the capacity. So you are still in undersaturated or uncongested condition. So free flow and then undersaturated, uncongested, and then after capacity, you will call it the breakdown. After capacity, you call it the breakdown, and in that case, the flow will start to reduce because of the queuing. So people are getting stuck in the queue. So the people who are moving out of the queue are getting lesser and lesser. As the queue is getting longer, the flow will start to become lesser and lesser until you reach jam density. Jam density means that you are now, there's no extra space for you. There's no space for move. There's no space to move. So you are bumper to bumper with the other driver. You have maximum density, but the speed at this density will be 0, and the flow will also be what? At maximum density, the flow will be what? Maximum? Yes, at maximum density, the flow will be what? Maximum? When you have jam density, sorry?
Minimum.
Flow will be
It should
minimum.
be 0.
0, yeah, 0. Don't be afraid, you can call it a 0. I'm not giving you marks here. Okay, 0 will not appear in your grade sheet. Huh? Okay, so 0, yeah, flow will be 0. Okay, you can see it here. Let me. So you have the different regimes which I was discussing. So you have the free flow. Okay, so free flow continues for some time period. It's not like you have 3-4 vehicles on the road and the speed is below free flow speed. No, free flow speed is maintained for a longer time. Okay, so you can see up to this region. So they have plotted the actual data from the field. So actual data, looks like this. So they have many points, but you can see the trend. It is going like this. If I can make the trend here, you can see the trend. It's going like this. The same which I showed you for the speed flow curve in the previous chapter. So you can see the trend, but because it has more points, so it's not like a curve. No? But you can see the trend. It's following the same trend which I showed you. So for some period of time, it follows a free flow speed, or it remains at the free flow speed. Okay. Then you have the pre-breakdown flow, which is the flow which is before capacity. But now in this region, the speed starts to reduce. So you cannot call it a free flow condition. This is not free flow regime. Up till this point, it was free flow regime. And then at this point, it is going below free flow, but it is still not breakdown yet. Then at this point, it reaches capacity. Okay, whatever the point is, at this point it reaches capacity. So I should make the curve like this, right? Okay, so at this point it reaches capacity. So after capacity, you can see the reduction in flow. This reduction in flow is because of the queue, like I said. So when the drivers reach capacity, the queue, and they go beyond capacity, the queue will start to be build. So because of the queue, you will see the flow going down. Okay, so this is the flow in the queue condition. Okay, and this is in the end when you are reaching near to the jam density. When you are reaching very near to the jam density, so the flow is going very close to 0. So these are the regimes which we talked about. Then you can see Q discharge flow rate as well. Q discharge is bottleneck, downstream of the bottleneck. So if you have a segment, okay, and this is your bottleneck. Okay, so Q discharge flow will be the flow here in this segment. The Q will start to be built here. At the end of the first segment, there will be a Q here, and the Q discharge flow rate will be here in this segment. Okay, and this is your bottleneck when you are entering the segment with less capacity. Okay, and it is usually less than the capacity of the segment. Because of the queue, you cannot reach the capacity of the segment. So even with the capacity of this segment, you will not reach it. Okay, so whatever the capacity of this segment was, because of the Q, the flow from this segment will be even less than the capacity. So they are saying it is like 7 to 20% less than the pre-breakdown capacity, means the capacity which you may have had without the Q. Pre-breakdown means capacity which you may have had without the Q. Okay. Then the congested flow is the flow from this segment to this segment. Okay, when you are crossing from this segment to this segment, this flow, this is congestion flow. Okay, the flow which is happening in the queue, Okay, and they are also defining pre-breakdown capacity here, this term. Okay, the maximum sustainable flow rate on a freeway without the facility breaking down. So like I said, without the queue. Okay, without the queue. So without the queue and without going into the congested flow state. Okay, now, okay, I will stop here. And we will continue tomorrow, inshallah, from here. You have some extra time to join your test. Okay, I'll be taking the attendance. I will be generating a form here because there was a suggestion to move the date of the quiz. Okay, now since I am taking the quiz in the class time, okay, so there is no conflict of the time. Okay, so in the form, whatever responses I get for the majority, I will take that date. That's it. Okay, because if somebody said that I had a conflict, I cannot attend the quiz because of class, then we had a problem. And this will not happen because the quiz will be in the class time. Okay, 1 hour quiz, 1 hour exam, not the quiz. Okay, not the weekly quiz, the midterm exam which you have for the course. Okay, so it will be in the class time. So even if majority of you say we are happy with this day, some of you may not be happy, I will just go with that date. So I will generate a form for that, and you have to, respond to that form whichever day you like. Okay, Dua Abdul Rasul, Ali Akil, okay, Ali Salah, okay, Iman Kamil.